Hello everyone, this is Majid, and in this tutorial I want to show you how we can use adapter design pattern in PHP. Adapter allows objects with incompatible interfaces to collaborate with each other. For now, we are going to implement a simple data storage system using PHP and Redis and see how the adapter works. Let's assume we have a simple application that saves data in the files. After a while, we decided to change the storage method and replace the file with Redis. In this case, we should adapt the Redis storage into the file storage in order to keep our code reusable and avoid a lot of changes. So at first, I want to implement file storage that contains write and read function, and next implement Redis storage that contains set and get. And after that, for replacing file storage with Redis storage, I want to create Redis adapter, and this class is responsible for adapting Redis functionality into the file storage. So let's jump to our code and see what we are going to do today. So let's open up the terminal, and at first I want to initialize the composer to use autoload functionality. So at first I want to create index.php and require the autoload file. And also I want to ini set display errors to true in order to see any error if we have. And in composer.json I want to autoload the app directory. App. So let's open up the terminal and run composer dump autoload. Yes. So now let's create app directory, and first let's see everything works fine. So hello world, and run this command php index.php. Yes, so autoload its work, and now at first I want to create interface called, for example, file store.php that contains two functions, function write and read that you've seen previously, public function write that it gets a string file name, and also it receives a string data, and also it returns a string in this case. So also we have a read function that it only receives file name and returns the data. And now let's us to create class, for example, file handler.php, and let's implementing file store functions. So we should define class file handler that implements file store. So I grab this function, paste here, and let's implement that. At first I want to define private base that I think we need a directory for saving our files, and for write function I want to use file put content function from PHP, and in this case I want to use, so let's define it const base to make it cleaner, self space file name, and in this case I want to add data, and after saving the data I want to just call read function of this class to get the data and return anything it saves. And for read function I want to get the data from the file, but at first I should check if file exists at this path. Yes, it's better. So if the file exists, so I want to use file get content from this path and return it to data. After that I should just return the data. So also it needs to create data directory to storing the data file. So I think that's it. So let's test this file handler class. So I want to create file handler object, file handler, and in this case I want to write, for example, in file foo I want to write bar, and also after that I want to read it and just simple print it var dump. I just want to read foo, so I need to see bar here, and also I want to create a file that its name should be foo. So let's run this simple application, and yes, we can see bar and also foo is here. And also, for example, we can use another example and see bars should return us example. Yes, and also it creates another file. So as you can see, my file handler is it's work, and now I want to create a Redis handler. So let's comment this, and I want to move to application and create, for example, Redis store.php, and also I want to use Redis handler.php. So Redis store is an interface, contains two functions, set and get, and it's receive key and value and return the value. And for get method you just pass get to retrieve the data that you saved to the Redis. So for the Redis handler, let me copy this class to make it better. I want to Redis handler implement Redis. So it contains set method with key and value, and also get method that only receive key and return the value. So we need to initialize the Redis class and connect it to the Redis. So in order, I need to construct function, construct, and it receive host that by default I want to pass my local host, and port, default port. I want to initialize Redis, and I want to call connect method to connect to the Redis, and also we need to define it as private Redis equals to null at first, and after that we simply call set function and pass key and values, and we return the get function with this key. For the get function we just pass key to the get function of Redis, and simply return it. So for the Redis handler, I think yes, that's it. So let's us test this class. So Redis handler, new app Redis handler, and just simply set foo equal to baz and getting the data, Redis handler get foo. So in this case, I expected to print baz on the console. So at first, let me clean the Redis, flush all data, and if we receive keys, yes, we got empty. So let me run the PHP index file. Yes, we received baz, and let me see the Redis CLI and receive keys. And yes, we received foo. So in this case, we see that Redis handler works fine, but let's assume we have the file handler, and for example, in this case, we have a lot of code here, and our application is containing a lot of modules, and if we want to change the file handler to Redis, we should change all of the function name, and instantiate Redis handler. So in this case, I want to create Redis adapter to adapt Redis to the file handler, and in this case we should define class called Redis adapter.php, and we adapt Redis class, Redis handler or Redis store into the file storage. So let me create PHP namespace app and class Redis adapter implement yes file store. So Redis adapter should implement file store and should implement method write and read. So in this case, we should adapt Redis store functionality into the file store. So at first we should get Redis store, and it's necessary to pass Redis store into the constructor. So function construct Redis store, and we assign class Redis store to passed variable. And in this case, simply return set file name and pass the data. And for the read function, I simply called get. And in this case, you can see that we adapt Redis store functions into the file store function in order to make our code cleaner and reusable and reducing the changes. So in this case, instead of changing all of this function, I just only comment this and create Redis handler, and I only pass this Redis handler to the Redis adapter. So in this case, I initialize it, file handler, new app, Redis adapter, and I pass Redis adapter, and now it should work. And instead of writing the data to the file, it should store it to the Redis. So let me test it. For example, I want to use name Majid and receive names. So in this case, we should see the name into the Redis CLI. So PHP index.php. Okay, so in this case we see that our file stays without changing. And let me see Redis CLI. and yes, in here you can see that the name saved to the Redis, and if you want to back to the file handler, you should only comment and instantiate file handler. So let's test it. PHP index.php, and yes, you can see the name file here, and the Majid is saved in the file. And I think that's it. And do not forget to subscribe my channel and like this video, and feel free to ask any question if you have. And have a nice day.